Good morning, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to this week's episode on the African Reform Movement channel, where we discuss everything African reform with an emphasis, as always, on Ghana. My name is Uche, your host, well, one of your co-hosts rather, and the main man is Dr. Nee Amudalko, sitting right there, ready and raring to go. So, first of all, apologies for us starting late. That was again my fault. The thing with the time difference, I really struggle to understand it, but never mind. We're here, we're online. So, if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. Please don't be shy. We want to hear from you. Please participate in the conversations and drop your questions in the box as Dr. Nee is raising any points that you've never heard of before we want further explanation on. So, Dr. Nee has a number of social media platforms that he operates on, which are all listed there. If you want to contact him on those, feel free, you can. I always encourage people to check out his website, sankofaafrica.com, in which he has like a number of different articles that he posts up there on a quite regular basis. So please feel free to check that out. Dr. Nee is a prolific author. He has a number of books on his book store, Weep Not Africa, The Fifth Republic, Tese Kwashi, The Star to Follow, and I understand there's some other books coming up in the not too distant future, but please check them out. You'll really get a good meaty understanding of why he thinks the way he thinks. I always say that. I always like to understand where a person's coming from. When you read their books and so on and so forth, or talk to them, you get an understanding of that. So that's that. Welcome, Sophia, the first one to join us this morning. Thank you, welcome. So today, Dr. is going to be talking about the incoming government, the government that Ghana needs, okay? So Dr. Nee, if you are ready, I'll hand over to you and you can share.
All right, Uche, I'm ready.
Okay.
Yeah, today is a very important topic because there's a lot happening in Ghana and people are asking for change and things, but change from what to what? We have been in this system for the past 65 years. So if you are calling for a change, you must know exactly what change we want. For me, I'm going to tell you the change that I want and the change that I believe Ghana deserves. Basically, this program is a summary of my book, Afrimocracy, Democracy Brewed in African Port. So I'm going to go through the chapters as I've written them, but I'll try and be brief so that we don't spend so much time here. As a matter of fact, I'm on call. So first slide. The state. All right, now I'll give you a brief summary of the state of Ghana as we have it now. The state as we have it now is a unitary state. Now, do not get it wrong. A unitary state does not mean a united state. A unitary state is a political system where all power is concentrated in one person, in one party, and in one place. As we speak now, that person is the president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo. That party is the National Patriotic Party, and that place is Accra. That's what that it means. It has got nothing to do with national cohesion. All right. Now, in the lead up to independence, there was the Convention People's Party of Kwame Nkrumah and National Liberation Movement of Bafo Akoto. Everything came to a stalemate as to Bafo Akoto was agitating for federalism and Nkrumah was agitating for a unitary state. So Nkrumah brought in Sir Frederick Byrne, one of the Queen's constitutional experts who was involved deeply in the division of India and Pakistan. He was brought to Ghana for Ghana to help Ghana write a new independent constitution. When he came, Nkrumah requested for him. When he came, Nkrumah received him warmly and introduced him to what he would want him to do. The National Liberation Movement, led by Bafo Akoto and K. Buzia and Dankwa, refused to meet him. They go, according to them, federalism or nothing. It's very interesting because at that point in time, the only member of that party or of that group in parliament was Busia. Okay, Busia Ghana Congress Party in the 1954 elections got only one seat. That was Busia's seat of Wenchi. Even that, he won by only 18 votes. Dankwa didn't win a seat. Yet they wanted to determine the future state of the country. Obviously, you cannot be a Democrat if you do not respect the wishes of the people. Anyway, this guy came, Sir Frederick Byrne came, and after staying in Ghana, I think 3 or 5 weeks, studying our culture, our traditional rule and everything, decided that the best way for Ghana at that point in time was regionalism. Regionalism was a midway between a unitary state and a federal state. Each region will have its own parliament or regional assembly, so to speak. That will be headed by a traditional leader. And what he suggested was that, for instance, Ashanti will be headed by the Asantehene, and for the other regions, they'll be headed by the president of the relevant regional House of Chiefs. And the national government will seat some portfolios to the regional assembly for them to oversee. So that was what he agreed. Look, at that point in time, Ghana was also probably ready for a federal system, a full federal system, and a unity system may lead to dictatorship or of some sorts. So he proposed this regional system, which Nkrumah accepted. Of course, the NLM did not accept, and it was entrenched in our independence constitution. Now, at that point in time, when he says it's entrenched, it can only be changed with 2/3 majority of parliament. Fortunately or unfortunately, CPP won more than 2/3 of parliament. So CPP, just after independence, rubbish that whole thing. And then we landed straight into a unitary state. Even that did not last long. By 1964, we were a full-fledged one-party state. So that's how the state of Ghana began. And that's why I tell people that Ghana was a deal, dead on arrival. Okay, there's no 2 ways about that. Anyway, we have, then when Nkrumah was overthrown, those who said they wanted federalism, when they had the power, 69, to write the constitution, they didn't go for a federal constitution. Now, as Busia, he also went for a unitary state. And we have held on to that up to today. We all know the state of Ghana today is dysfunctional, absolutely dysfunctional. So when people are asking for a change, they must know what they are asking for. For me, a change means change the structure of the state itself. That's where everything begins. And I propose economic federalism, not the ethnic federalism of Bafakoto. Now, economic federalism means that we're using economic factors to define the new states. And the chief economic factor we're going to use is labor. Labor is one of the 3 major factors of production. And that's what we're going to use. And labor means population. We decide that for a community to be classified as a state, it must have 8 to 10% of the population, total population. So that no president can come and promise people a new state or a new region, because you need to meet that threshold of at least 8%. And no ethnic group, no tribe, no whatever can ask for a region, because they must also meet the threshold of at least 8%. 8 to 10% will form a state. Now, we'll go back to Sir Frederick Byrne's formula. I mean, I wrote this long before I even heard of Frederick Byrne, but let's put it in perspective. What Frederick Byrne proposed for Ghana in 1955, which was supposed to be part of Ghana's political arrangement in 1957, is what UK started in 1997 with the opening or the reopening of the Scottish Parliament. Today, UK is a regional system with Parliament in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Now, if we had not abolished it just after independence, we would have been 40 years ahead of UK in constitutional development. But we abolished it. We went to one-party state. If we come back to unity state, we don't know what you are doing. We are going to economic federalism, where the 8 to 10% will define a state. Now, each state is going to have a parliament. of 32 members. Okay. 80% will be through universal adult suffrage. That is 25%, 25 of these 32 will be elected directly from 25 constituencies in each state. Each state will have 5 districts, and each district will have 5 constituencies. At the end of the day, we have 25 constituencies in each state. That will be represented by 1 member of parliament in the state parliament. At the moment, the president appoints 30% of all these assemblies. We say, no, we completely reject that. What we have said is that 80% of them, of the MPs in the state parliament will be through universal adult suffrage, and 20% will be elected through the state traditional authority, which we call regional house of chiefs today. It will be replaced by state traditional authority. So there are some people who are very brilliant, but they're not political animals, and they don't want to get involved into active politics. So these people, the state traditional authorities will write selection criteria that we want citizens who are 30 years or above, or whatever years above, with at least a university degree, with 10 years experience, to apply to be selected to represent the state traditional authority in parliament. And then these are people, so we can use that mechanism to get skilled people who do not want to enter into rough party politics. 7 from the regional house of chiefs or state traditional authority, and 25 from the constituencies in the states. That will form the state parliament. Now, the state parliament is going to have a premier, who is the leader of the largest party in parliament, and 6 commissioners. These 6 commissioners are going to be commissioner for health, education, law and order, power and water, agriculture and industries, and then housing, infrastructure, and transport. These are the 6 core areas that the state government would provide for the citizens. We are not going to be in a situation where Kumasi will criticize the president for building a market in Cape Coast and not in Kumasi, or building a market in Kumasi and not in Sunyani. A president cannot be going around building markets. This should be the responsibility of state government. It is ridiculous that a vice president will leave Accra to go and commission public toilets, because there's nothing else they can show for their stewardship. We're going to move away from that, but this is the plan I'm talking about. There are these 6 areas that will be controlled by state parliaments. We are moving away from the dysfunctional system that we have now. And I can talk about this the whole day, but in a nutshell, this is what I'm looking at. We are going to have state governments that will take part of the work that the national government is doing now, by doing so inefficiently. All development is local, and that is the point. All right. How are we going to fund these states? Primary source of funding is from VAT. Okay, so if you collect 20 billion cedis in VAT, and a state is 10%, then that state will have 10% of the 20 billion VAT money. That is 2 billion. If the state is 8%, that state will have 8% of the VAT money, which is 1.6 billion. And in that way, we'll be sharing the money fairly. We're not going to spend the 20 billion in Accra, which is what is happening now. And that's why everybody is coming to Accra, because that's where the national money is spent. We are going to change the whole formula. This is just in the nutshell. Next slide. We come to executive. What kind of executive system do we want? You all hear recently that Bawumia, the vice president, went to the north and was lamenting that as a vice president, he had no job to do. He only does what the president gives to him. He has no portfolio. He has this. They only use him for dirty work. And that's what I wrote in my book. the vice president position is a disaster. You have to be a lapdog of the president. I propose the president, a split executive of an elected president and an appointed prime minister. Now, we have to understand that this is Afrimocracy, democracy brewed in African ports. 4,000 years ago in Egypt, when Joseph came out to explain the dream of Pharaoh to him, what did Pharaoh do? Pharaoh removed his ring and put on Joseph's ring, and he said that you are in charge of the whole of Egypt. The only thing, the only difference between me and you is my throne. Nothing will be done without you. And he dressed him up as his prime minister. The concept of prime minister and a president started from Africa. So when I say democracy brewed in African port, that's what I'm talking about. Let's come home. In 1701, when Anoche founded Ashanti for his friend Tutu, he made, a golden stool was for the king, and then there was a silver stool. Now, the silver stool became the stool of the second in charge, and that is the Mampong Hini. You have to understand that Mampong is not part of Kumasi. Asante Hini was both the Kumasi Hini and Asante Hini. There were other chiefs in Kumasi, but they were not given the second in command position. The Mampong Hini is the paramount chief of Mampong and the second in charge of the whole kingdom. If the Asante Hini is not there, it's the Mampong Hini who acts. You have to understand that they are from two different clans, but they have their work cut out for them. Now, when you come to Accra, the Gamanche is from a place in Accra called Abola. But who is his prime minister? His prime minister is the Sempe Manche, who is the Mankralu of the Gas State. That's from a different place in Accra. They said when you come to Osu, we have the Osu Manche from Kinkawe, and you have the Mankralu, the prime minister from Ashanti. Now, what I'm telling you is that we have this system in our traditional setup. But the interesting thing is this: in our traditional setup, these prime ministers do not actually come from the same place as the president or the king or the chief, paramount chief, whatever you want to call it. They come from. So we have always had a union government where the president came from one part and the prime minister came from another part. And that's what I bring on board here. That you have a president and a prime minister. The prime minister may come from the president party or may come from a different party, depending on the results. Look, guys, in the Olympic Games, it doesn't matter how fast Usain Bolt will run. At the end of the day, he did not pick the gold, the silver, and the bronze medals. He will pick the gold medal, somebody else will pick the silver, and another person will pick the bronze. Is it possible to have that system in our elections so that this do and die of what you call that do and die, winner takes all syndrome is broken down, so that we can be able to put the best talent together to govern our country properly? We lack capacity. And it's clear that one party struggles to have the capacity for all the positions that we need to effectively run to get a good government. So I propose that if the second party gets more than 45% of the votes, the second party leader should be made the prime minister. Because in Ashanti, in Ga, in Osu, we have presidents who come from a different place and prime ministers who also come from a different place. They don't have to be friends, but that's a structure, and they have to work together for the good of their jurisdiction. So we can do the same. A president and a prime minister. Obviously, if the second person does not get more than 45%, then the president can choose somebody from his own party to become the prime minister. I think that if you're running a system and one person is able to get 45% of the total vote, he has enough support that if he's been a prime minister, it makes sense. We cannot have a system where somebody gets 50.3 of the 0.7 or even 51 or 54, and then that person gets 100% power. That's what we have done. Winner takes all, and we are now in the bottomless pit. We've got to start thinking. But these are things I have written many years back. This is a book I have published many years back before this disaster in which we are. So I'm not just reacting to the present. I had foretold these things many years back, that if we proceed in the direction we have been proceeding since independence, this is where we get to. All right, so we have the president and the prime minister that may or may not come from the president party based on election results. Then we have 5 senior ministers and 20 sector ministers. Now, we are going to have a total of 25 ministers. These 25 ministers, we are going to regroup them into 5 super ministries of related portfolios. So you're going to have, for instance, Minister of Health and Minister of Education and Minister of Social Welfare, the big spenders in one super ministry group. 5 ministers, 5 ministry, and one of them becomes the senior minister of that super ministry. So you're going to have 5 super ministers and 20 sector ministers, total of 25. Now, in the same super ministry, there will be no deputies. Okay, if one minister is not around, because you run a common budget and common agenda, the other minister in that super ministry will be able to act for him. So we're not going to have deputies. These are the kind of things you expect somebody who is talking about looking at Ghana's debts, looking at Ghana's budget deficit and stuff like that. How do we manage our bureaucracy to reduce cost? You're going to have these arrangements. So we're going to have a president, a prime minister, and 25 ministers. 5 of these 25 ministers will become senior ministers. Now, the president, the prime minister, and the 5 senior ministers will form the Higher Executive Council. That will be headed by the president. This body will become like the policy-making body, and they're going to have the General Executive Committee, which is going to be the regular cabinet, and that will be headed by the prime minister. So the High Executive Council meets, they draw the plan, and the prime minister will take this plan back to the general membership of his cabinet or a cabinet, say like, look, this is what you have planned, and this is the way we are going to implement the plan. So we have this system in place: president, prime minister, 5 senior ministers. They form the High Executive Council, which becomes the nucleus for the economic management team. Now, with these 7 members, the president, depending on what is being discussed, can actually co-opt either the governor of Bank of Ghana or anybody he believes will be able to strengthen the issue of economic management to come and join them to discuss. But this same High Executive Council will form the nucleus of the economic management team. Now, this is what's going to happen. With the 25 members of the cabinet, 20 of these members will be shared to the various political parties, so that if what it means is that 5% of votes. Yeah, I'm very well. Are they category 1 and 2? Because after 10 o'clock, I only deal with 1 and 2.
hi there, everyone. Just give Dr. Neat a moment. He's just taking the call. He did say he was on call earlier, so just bear with him 1 second. We already have a question. Thank you, Eric, for that. We'll see if we can post that question up. Greetings, Catherine. Thank you for joining us.
All right, so
Okay,
yeah, I finished. Yeah, I'll go in about 30 minutes. All right, so now we're talking about the threshold for a party to have a member of cabinet is 5%. So if party A or party C gets 10% of the popular vote, that party will get 2 members of parliament. So we have a scenario where the winning party gets 55%. This winning party then will get 11 of the 20 polls available for parties. Then party B gets 30%. Party B will get 6 members of cabinet, and if party C gets 10%, total of 100, then the party C will get 2. Now, these 3 parties will get 80% of the total number of seats, or total number of polls, which is 20. The remaining 5% becomes the gold medal for the party that won. So the president will then have this additional 5%. The second person has got his silver medal, and the third person has got his bronze medal. The president will then have his extra 5% to form the 25-member cabinet. That is my solution to winner takes all. We need a government of national unity, because we have made this politics a matter of life and death. People do everything possible because they want a bit of the power. And in a way, they are not wrong, because you cannot get 51% of votes and get 100% of power. It means the 49% of people who did not vote for you, they do not actually matter. What we have to understand in representative democracy is that at elections, we the people transfer our sovereignty to the elected. So in a way, the sovereignty we transfer must be proportional to power the people get. But when 51% of sovereignty is transferred to you by getting 100% of power, then you have cheated the people. And this is what I call the chempe, that equal share, or shebu, equal share or proportional representation, even in the cabinet. We need to move away, because we have seen what the winner takes all does. We are in the bottomless pit. We need to find our way out. So this, in a nutshell, my plan for the executive. A president who is the head of state and commander-in-chief of armed forces, and a prime minister who is head of government, who will actually go to, anyway, when it comes to parliament, you see what I'm talking about. The prime minister is the head of government. And he or she may come from the president party or the second party. The second party is able to get more than 45% of the popular vote. All right, next slide. The electoral system. Okay. All right. Yes. So we are talking about football match. We are talking about gala or whatever, or league between different clubs. Well, there ought to be a referee to make it fair. But for it to be fair, the referee itself must be seen to be fair. And for the referee to be seen to be fair, none of the competing parties or the competing teams should have a hand in selecting the referee, the linesman, the match commissioner. What we have today is that the president is the one who selects this electoral commission. So there's conflict of interest. Why the draft of the constitution did not say that, I cannot tell. All right. So let's move on. So we have an electoral commission. It's going to be a completely different scenario. We're going to have an electoral commission That's made up of 5 members. 1 appeal court judge, government statistician, auditor general, IGP. And then the 5th person is going to be the chief electoral officer. Now, these 4 people, they are statutory public officers. It doesn't matter who is in charge as president. These people will represent these organs they head in the electoral commission. And then they will advertise for the chief electoral officer who will be doing the work that the electoral commissioner is doing now. So they advertise and eligible Ghanaians apply and they interview them, and then these people will choose one of them to become the chief electoral officer. Basically, we are going to run the electoral commission like a ministry, except that the chief electoral officer will be answerable to the electoral commission and not to the president. So now we have an electoral committee, which is easy, and we have electoral secretariat. The electoral secretariat will be headed by the chief electoral officer, who has been appointed by the electoral commission. And he is going to be helped by 6 directors, 1 for elections, 1 for finance, 1 for human resources, 1 for law, 1 for public education, and 1 for something else I can't remember. These are all in my book, Afrimocracy. Okay, so we have a part-time electoral commission and a full-time electoral secretariat, which will be run like a ministry, but the electoral secretariat will be under the control and guidance of the electoral commission. And the chief electoral officer, who will head the electoral secretariat, is appointed by the electoral commission and is also the secretary to the electoral commission. Now, each state is going to have its own state electoral secretariat that will be put in place by each state government. So you're not going to sit in Accra for one person to control everything. Each state will have its own state electoral secretariat, because what you don't want to happen is a president to manipulate the referencing system to his advantage. We have seen it in Ghana. Almost every election is disputed. We must grow out of that. And we can only do that by having a transparent electoral commission and electoral secretariat who are not appointed by any of the competing teams. Next slide, please. Legislature, Chempe or Shebu or proportional representation. Very simple. We are going to have 100-member chamber. Not 150, not 200, not 275, 100. I live in Australia, and we have 150-member chamber. Now, you have to understand that Australia GDP for 25 million people is 2.1 trillion. With all this money, Ghana GDP now with the city, our GDP is about 40 billion. Okay, with all this money, more than 50 times the GDP of Ghana, they have only 150 parliamentarians. You got to cut your clothes according to the size of your material. This is the kind of thing you want people who are serious about our debts, who are serious about our deficit, to be talking about. Okay, to cut the bureaucracy. We're going to have a legislature of 100, full stop. And it's going to be based on proportional representation. So after elections, if Ashanti region, for instance, pulls 20% of the votes, Ashanti will have 20% of representation in parliament. If Greater Accra pulls 10%, Greater Accra will have 10% representation in parliament. If Central region pulls 9%, Central region will have 9% of representation in parliament. If Brong Ahafo pulls 10%, he's going to have 10% representation in parliament. At the end of the day, we need 100 members of parliament. Now, if Greater Accra, for instance, gets 10% of votes, okay, so it's got 10% of representation, or 10%, which is 10 MPs, and ARM wins 60% of votes in Greater Accra, it means ARM will get 6 out of the 10 seats in parliament in Greater Accra. So ARM will have 6 members 6 of its members represent the party in parliament. And it will be the same everywhere. Okay? If in Ashanti, ARM gets 30% of the votes there, and Ashanti has 10 seats, or Ashanti has 20 seats, the ARM is going to have 30% of 20 seats, which is 6 seats. And the same thing will happen everywhere. All right. 100 members of parliament, and we're going to go through proportional representation. We're not going to have a system today like we have today. Greater Accra is about 20% of the population, but it has only, if we are using the number of seats in parliament, 275, if a region has 20% of the seats, that region should have 55%, 55 seats in parliament. But Greater Accra has only 34. If Ashanti is 20%, Ashanti should have 55 members of parliament, but Ashanti has 47. Now, Greater Accra is almost twice the population of Eastern Region, but it's got 34 seats, and Eastern Region has got 33 seats. So that is not fair. One group is underrepresented and another group is overrepresented. In the first state, democracy must represent or must reflect demography. And that's the point. So I'm telling you that we're going to have 100 members of parliament, and nobody can change that because it's not based on constituency, it's based on population. The 275 we're going to have 100, and we can save billions of cedis. This is what we mean by budget repair. This is how you repair your budget. When you stand up as a president or a potential presidential candidate or an ex-president, you're talking about debt and deficit, and you do not understand it, you don't mention these things, you're talking rubbish. Because this is where the money goes. You don't know what you are talking about, especially if you have been a president before. Why do we need 275 members of parliament? I want to know. Next slide. Next slide, please. Judiciary. All right. This is the funniest part. Because under a federal system, ECOFED, we're going to have 2 levels of the bench. At the federal level, we have the Constitutional Court, which is going to be the Supreme Court of the land. And then we have the Federal Court of Appeal. So only 2 courts at the national level, Constitutional Court and Federal Court of Appeal. Then at the state level, we have, now this is how the system works in South Africa, okay? I want to make that point clear. And to some extent, it works in Australia too. Actually, the same thing in Australia. So we have the Constitutional Court as the highest court in the land, the Federal Court of Appeal as the next below it, and then we have the state court system. The state court system is led by the state Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court is actually within the states, not at the national level. And then we have the high courts, and then we have the magistrate courts. All these ones operate under the state judicial system. The only 2 that operate under the national judicial system are the Constitutional Court and the Federal Court of Appeal. Now, I can talk about this the whole day. What we think, or what I think, is that the Federal Court of Appeal and the State Supreme Court, the head of the State Supreme Court, which is the chief judge of the state, is equivalent to the Federal Court of Appeal member. So either of them can be promoted to the Constitutional Court when the vacancy arises. The plan is that the Constitutional Court should have between 7, maximum 9 members, and the Federal Court of Appeal about 27 members or so. I think that's what I wrote in the book. So we're going to cut down the number. As we are speaking now, we have over probably 40-something judges in the Court of Appeal. And we have about 18 judges in the Supreme Court. We're going to slash everything. This is what they call cutting to the bone. All right. And then we'll look at how to redistribute personnel to make work easy for everybody. The state system is going to take probably 90% of the work of the judiciary. And at the federal level, the Federal Court of Appeal, the Constitutional Court will take the remaining ones. All right. But this is a structure. This is a revolution in our judicial system. Next slide. Council of State. All right. The Council of State you have today is supposed to be the advisor to the president, but he actually appoints about 60%, including the chairman of the Council of State. So the Council of State has never disagreed with the president, not on one issue. All that is going in Ghana, on Ghana today, whatever the president takes to them, they support it. In this our crisis, the Constitution says that the president, in consultation with the Council of State, may nominate members of the Supreme Court. They couldn't tell the president, look, Mr. President, we already have 14 members. We have 18. If by the grace of God, 4 are retired. At this point in time, the way we are struggling, let's keep the 14. In fact, the 14 is even too much. Those who learn this thing from the United Kingdom, they only have 12. The richest country, America, has only 9. Australia has only 7. So why must we have 18? Why must we have 14? The Council of State has failed to advise the president, no, we are not going to agree for you to appoint 4 more members, especially at this point in time. And this is the lowest hanging fruit for John Mahama when he made his speech. He should have just punched this, that I'm authorizing or I'm directing my members of parliament not to be involved in nominating or in approving these 4 members of nominated for the Supreme Court because we don't have money. This is not the time to have 18 justices in the Supreme Court. The 14 is even too much. If I'm elected in 2024, John Mahama, I'll slash it to 9. He wouldn't do that. Because in his mind, when he comes, or if he comes, he's also going to appoint more members of his side to balance what Akufo-Addo has done, because there's no upper limit to the Supreme Court. He was there for 4 years. He did not introduce any executive instrument to set a cap. And today, Akufo-Addo has taken advantage of that, and we have 18 members of the Supreme Court. And this is what we call incompetence. They don't even understand governance. Even given a chance in this whole nonsense, when you have the chance to prove that you have learned something, and if you are given a chance again, you do things differently, he didn't even mention this. Because for them, all they want to do as president is borrow, inflate, and build. Go and borrow money, double the price of whatever, build it, and then there will be no money to maintain what you build, and there's no money to repay the loans they collected. It is an absolute joke, but I'm telling you that it's going to be different. Council of State. So you're going to have a 50-member Council of State, which, among other things, will have senatorial duties by appointing the top statutory public officers. Now, it's going to be different. 23 members of this National Council of State will come from national level, 22 will come from state, and 5 will come from the National Transitional Authority, which is going to replace the National House of Chiefs. Now, the 22 from the states will be the state premier and the state speaker of parliament. So when we say Council of State, when you enter the place, you see the whole nation represented there. 2 members from each state. You're going to have 11 states, by the way. 2 members from each state, the premier and the speaker of parliament. And then from the national level, we're going to have the president, the prime minister, and the 5 senior ministers. So that is 7 from the executive. You're going to have 6 from parliament, 3 from government, 3 from opposition. You're going to have 3 from the Supreme Court, from the judiciary. You're going to have 3 from the security services, the army, the police, and the intelligence service. Then we're going to have the head of civil service as a secretary, and we're going to have governor of Bank of Ghana, and we're going to have all these powerful people part of the Council of State, but they are statutory officers. They are not being appointed by the president. The president himself will be there. Now, this model follows that of Ashantiman Shamu, the Ashantiman Council, where you have Otunfo there, you have Momponhini there, you have all the paramount chiefs there, and you have other stakeholders there. Therefore, the Council of State of Ashanti. And we are going to model our Council of State on the basis of that. Mind you, Ashanti doesn't appoint one single paramount chief in Ashanti region. They are all appointed independently by their own people. Okay? So we're going to change it. We're not going to have a Mumu Council of State where nobody can say anything to the president. The president himself will be there and he will be drilled by some people. 23 from national, 22 from state, and 5 from National Transition Authority, the original sovereignty holders, okay, of our land. 50. Next slide.
That's the last slide, Dr. Nee.
Oh, is that all?
That's all the slides, yeah.
I think there's something I haven't discussed. So anyway, running through, we talk about electoral commission, the way we're going to set it up to be independent and transparent. We talk about executive, the way we're going to set it up so that it reflects the demography, okay? It also breaks down and destroys the winner takes all. We're going to have a permanent structure for national government of national unity, the way the posts will be filled, and the way we make sure that everybody or any party that gets more than 5% gets representation in that. I learned that from South Africa. In their transitional arrangement, any party that got 10% will get 1 cabinet position, 20%, 2 cabinet positions, blah, 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 blah. So I got it from there. I've lowered the threshold. I've lowered the threshold for Ghana to 5%. All right. Then we talk about legislature, which is going to proportional representation of 100 members only. All right. Talk about the judiciary, that's going to be in 2 layers: federal and state. Federal, Constitutional Court and Federal Court of Appeal, and the state level, you're going to have the Supreme Court of the state, you're going to have the High Court and the Magistrate Courts in the state under the state judicial system. Then we talk about what else? Council of States. 23 from national, 22 from state, and 5 from National Transition Authority. Then what else? I've forgotten. But this is the basic summary of my book. You still have to buy the book though. But now when you're reading, you understand exactly where I'm coming from. Like I've told you, I don't believe in vice presidency. It's a complete waste of everybody's time. I believe in a prime minister. Executive, the president as head of states and commander-in-chief, and the prime minister as head of government, who represent government in parliament. Now, I haven't said one thing. The way the parliament will function is that every Friday is going to be question time. And the prime minister and the whole cabinet of 25 ministers will be in parliament to answer to the people, to answer to the people everything they've done. Every single Friday is going to be fireworks in parliament. The prime minister and the 25 members of his or her cabinet will be in parliament and they will be drilled. They will have to be accountable to the people. What you are doing is an absolute joke. And what I'm telling you is this: when these things begin to work and yield fruit, the world will come and learn from us. Because I know how their system works. And their system, though is better than ours, still has many flaws. Our democracy has tightened the flaws. It's watertight. And that is the government that Ghana needs. And that's the incoming government. Believe you me, we will take over.
Thank you, Dr. Nee, for that. That was very, very rousing. I hope that gave a lot of you some sort of encouragement. And that still has been sitting there watching and knows the way forward, knows the way out of this mess that continues to unfold, unfortunately, before our eyes. So Eric has got a 2-part question here.
Okay.
He says, others are of the view that we should not have more than 6 states in Ghana. What's your take? And then he says, 6 states require us to have a minimum of 15% of the population to form a state.
Yeah, we can. We definitely can do that. But you see, the natural borders, as we have it now, it makes a lot of sense to use 8 to 10% because there will not be much disruption For instance, using the 8 to 10%, there will be only 2 changes. Actually, there will be only 3 changes. I wouldn't even say 3 changes, but the main changes will be that Accra and Kumasi that have already hit the threshold of 8% will become city states. And the North, which is 18% of our population, will have 2 states. The rest are all within the 8 to 10%. So it's a lot easier. It's least traumatic. And you know, basic physics, you always take the line of least resistance. So it will be a lot easier. But having said that, mathematically, yes, you can have 6 states, but you see the complications where you're trying to merge and merge and divide and slice regions into different states as we have it now. When we gained independence, we had only 5 regions. So it would have been a lot easier to have maintained that. I agree 100%. But as we have it now, it will be least disruptive if we go with the natural flow that almost all the regions, with the exception of Greater Accra and Ashanti, that have double regions in them. I mean, they're about 18%. So they will require to have one state built around Accra as a city state, and another state built around Kumasi, so that we have 2 states in Ashanti now, 2 states in Greater Accra, and of course the North, that they've created so many super districts there, about 5 of them, with only 18% of the population, they're going to have 2 states. So I understand what you're saying, but logistically, I think it's a lot easier if we maintain these ratios.
Hubert has said, I don't think anybody in Ghana understands constitution governance structures like this man.
Yay! Thank you very much, Hubert.
And then Eric's put another comment here, goes, it's unbelievable that we have professors lecturing governance in universities and do not understand this kind of stuff.
Give glory to God. I can say that humbly.
Those are all the questions. So come on, guys, you've heard the whole thing now. If there's any questions you have burning in your mind, please do drop them in the box so that we can discuss them, please. Whilst we're doing that, I'll just let you know a few of the people on here, Dr. Nee. Sophia.
All right, good morning. How are you?
There is Christopher.
Yeah, this man lives by the side of the river water. And I always tell him that you from Bato, you should be the richest region in Ghana. Okay? They say that the Nile is Egypt and Egypt is the Nile. In Ghana, the water is not Ghana and Ghana is not water. Actually, the water is the 4th poorest region in Ghana. That is a sin. And we're going to take over and change your place into a food basket for Ghana. Okay? Thank you. Hello, Biko. How are you? Hey, Sister Viola, this is my big sister. How are you?
Oh, then we have Catherine.
Oh, Mommy Red. How are you, Catherine? I mean,
as always, Kenneth. Kenneth is always on
Old Kent Road. Today I haven't heard of you. Ask me a question, boss. I know you are very upset, okay, but
why is he very upset?
Oh, with what is happening in Ghana, you know, we are all sinking a bottomless pit. It looks like, yeah. So I know he's quite upset.
Okay. Another question here from Eric just come in. Different political parties forming cabinet. How do you envisage policies being debated in cabinet?
Okay, so, you know, hey, guys, you know that Netanyahu has won again in Israel. Now, Netanyahu is going to form cabinet with 3 or 4 other far right or whatever other parties. So it's possible. In South Africa, I was there when they formed the government of national unity between ANC, National Party of the Clerk, and IFP. In fact, the Pan-Africanist Congress, that got only 1.2%. Mandela offered their leader, Stanley, I've forgotten his name, a position in his cabinet. It all depends on the leader and his willingness to accept that nation building is a collective effort. It all depends on him. The constitution says that 10% one post. Buthelezi got 10%. Mandela gave him 3 posts. De Klerk got 21%. Instead of 2, Mandela gave him 5 posts. Because he believed that he needed these people to boost his government. He needed that capacity. So it is not, there has never been a one-party government in Israel since 1947. Always from a coalition, because that's the nature of it. And it's better we learn, like I said before, when you go to Osu Traditional Council today, Osu Traditional Council, we have people from Kinkanwe, Ashente, Alata, and Ano, all from different parts coming together to form the local government, traditional government of Osu. So it is in our DNA. This one cannot teach us democracy. We know it already. So having different parties forming a cabinet is actually the way we run our traditional system. So that's no news.
Okay. Right, there are no more questions at the moment. Anybody, this is your last opportunity to get some questions in.
All right.
And so let us say,
guys, you know,
all the things
I'm on call in the hospital and I promise I'll be there in 30 minutes. So.
Oh, okay, no problem. I was going to ask something, but it's okay, no worries. Well, thank you, everybody.
Oh, no, ask.
Next time we'll be on time. No, I was going to ask, like, you know, how soon do you think you'd roll these things out? That's all. Just look at a timeline, but
how what?
You know,
how what?
Timeline, like for example, like you get into government. Timeline.
You know
timeline.
What? In December, late December 2016, after Akufo-Addo won the 2016 elections, I wrote a letter to him. Okay. And I told him those of you who were following on Facebook, I told him the letter how to use the present flawed constitution to move towards what I'm saying today. The transitional arrangement, what should be done, what should be done, what should be done. The man did not do that. The man came with his what do you call that thing? Transitional team. The moment he released his transitional team, I told everybody on Facebook that it is going to be a disaster. This is not a dead brain. It's going to be a disaster. Hey, and his people, they were fighting me. I said, I'm telling you, this man is brainless. He's going to plan, because after all his travel to be president, he had no vision. So clear from announcing his transitional team. Very easy to know somebody who is clueless. Today, all those people, they are running around, they are even shy of meeting me anywhere. Because Akufo-Addo has proven me right. But I don't want him to, I wanted him to prove me wrong, that he has something for the state. Because what do I get from proving me right? But what you do not have, you cannot give. Okay? When the layman meet Peter, James, and John at the beautiful gate, he asked them for money. And what did they tell him? For silver and gold have we none, but such as we have, we give. Okay? You can never give what you don't have. It's impossible. Akufo doesn't have anything in his head. He's been employed from 1977 when he joined the Movement for Freedom and Justice to oppose Acheampong's union government. He hasn't written one book about his ideas about governance. And he lied to the people. And the Gullah people believe. And now they are reaping the whirlwind. You cannot give what you don't have. As I talk to you, you know what I have, what I can give. And I'm not bragging, because I'm writing them in books. And I can recite the whole book, because I wrote it. I didn't plagiarize anyone, and you don't find them anywhere what I wrote, because I lived them. I lived in the traditional setup. I know how traditional system works. All I have to do is to plaster here and there what I've learned from outside, from South Africa, from Australia. If you don't have that experience, you can't do it that way. And I'm not bragging. It's a simple truth.
One last, I don't know if you have time for one last question. Brief answer. Would policies be less politicized?
Yeah, very, 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 very depoliticized. It will be depoliticized. Policies will be nationalized. Now, if you understand the way the Council of State is going to work, you understand why it's going to be the same. It's going to be the place for national policies to be accepted by all the different states, all the whatever who are there. So it's not going to be a political matter. It's going to be a environmental matter. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because we have to move away from that. When states have their development plans that they will bring to Council of State for scrutiny and approval, you realize that it's going to be depoliticized. Because I'm not going to, or the president is going to decide for state A or for state B. It's not going to be the president who's going to decide. The state will have that capacity. Now in UK, Scotland Parliament has capacity to make decisions for Scotland. I mean, some capacity. NHS Scotland is not dependent on NHS England and Wales. They are different. As a matter of fact, when you say Britain, you mean England and Wales. When you say Great Britain, you mean England, Wales, and Scotland. When you say UK, you mean Great Britain plus Northern Ireland. And these are different nuances in that system you see there. They have quite significant independence, autonomies. And we got to learn, we got to move forward. That's what Ghana needs. I can talk about this the whole day.
Okay, well, Dr. Smith, we're going to let you go now because, as you said, you're on call. Thank you again for giving us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. We'll meet on WhatsApp. God bless. Let me go.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a good Saturday. See you in 2 weeks' time.